Madam President and Senators, good morning.
Good morning.
On Sunday coming up, will be celebrating peace, as it is the second Sunday in Advent. Isaiah 2 and 4 states, "He shall judge between the nations, and shall decide disputes for many peoples. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." As we approach the end of the year and the Christmas season, our world needs real, genuine peace. Peace is defined as freedom from disturbance, quiet, a state or period in which there is no war or war has ended. But don't leaders need peace internally? Sometimes you have so much inner turmoil and personal going-ons. Isn't peace needed in our families, our communities, and our islands? With the violence, verbal assaults, and the disagreements that occur on a daily basis? Where selfish people do whatever to have their way and to exercise dominance over others? And isn't it needed in our world where nations attack each other and some even go all the way to exercise their dominion and their power? Our world in our Bahamas needs real, lasting peace. John Keeble said, "Peace is the first thing the angels sang." As you move into this joyful, holy season, I invite each of you to what contribution can I make so that the Bahamas can be a more peaceful society? And what do I need to do to ensure that I have inner tranquility and peace? Today, for the rest here, remember, when you find peace within yourself, you become the kind of person who can live at peace with others. That's a quote from the Peace. I encourage you to take time to develop personal inner peace. Let go of the stresses and worries so that you can have peace here with others. Secondly, I encourage you to be determined to stand for right, but do not be warlike, mean, not displaying compassion. And thirdly, understand that we may not always agree on matters, and there may be a history of hurts and grudges. But be determined to extend forgiveness and seek forgiveness even when the wrong party or wrong individual does not acknowledge their wrong. And after proverb states, peace is costly, but it is worth the sacrifice. Colossians 3:15 states from the New Living Translation, "And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and be thankful." Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, the God of peace, we give thanks for this holy season of Advent, a time that we can reflect and be recalibrated by your Spirit. Help our senators and each of us to be agents of peace. Give them inner peace to deal with their personal matters and societal pressures and responsibilities. Guide their thoughts, words, and actions. And may they model the example of being peacemakers. And may all they do honor you, protect them, and keep their families. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Amen.
Please join in the prayer of our Lord. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning, Senators. Order of business for Thursday, the 7th of December, 2023. Adoption of minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Senate held on Wednesday, 8th November 2023 be adopted.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the minutes of the Senate meeting held on the 8th of November 2023 be adopted. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The minutes of the 8th of November 2023 are hereby adopted. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, swearing in of new senators, communication by the President. As always, the Chair is appreciative of Reverend Carla Culmer's timely devotion. The Chair sends congratulations to Kingsley Smith for being sworn in as the Member of Parliament on yesterday as a result of his recent victory at the polls for the constituency of West End, Grand Bahama, and Bimini. I'll leave that for you to say. Mr. Kingsley Smith, Member of Parliament, he's welcome to the parliamentary designation, and I hope, it is the Chair's hope, that you find it a privilege and a singular honor and a collective honor to serve the Bahamian people in general and the constituency of West End, Grand Bahama in particular. On a sad note, the Chair sends sincere condolences to the family of Terry Antonio, who passed away on November 20th, 2023, to her children Terrell and LaRon, her father Philip Antonio, who's 101, and her sisters and wider family. You all are in our thoughts and prayers during this most difficult time. Terry was a warm, peaceful, encouraging, sweet, and gentle soul who will be missed. May she rest in peace and rise in the first resurrection. On a happy note, a happy and blessed birthday is extended to our very own Senator Ronald Duncombe, who is celebrating his birthday today. Happy birthday, Senator Duncombe. Continue to bless you, your family, your business, your stellar work, and the work that you do for next year, and the constituency of Kalani. In closing, may God continue to bless each and every one of you senators and your families, and may God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the House of Assembly.
Message from the House of Assembly.
Bahamas number 4. Message to the Honorable the President and Honorable of the Senate from the Speaker and representatives of the Honorable House of Assembly. The House of Assembly acquaints the Honorable the Senate that they have passed the following bills and desire the consent of that Honorable Chamber, namely, a bill for an act to change the name of Hog Key and east of the Little Exuma mainland to Torch Key. A bill for an act to amend the Supreme Court Act to provide for an increase of the number of justices. A bill for an act to establish an independent body to manage the administration of the courts, to provide support services to and for judicial officers, and to provide for related matters. A bill for an act to amend the Judges' Remuneration and Pensions Act. A bill for an act to amend the Magistrates Act. A bill for an act to amend the Coroners Act. A bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act. House of Assembly, Nassau, 29th November 2023. Patricia Debo, Speaker. Bahamas number 5. Message to the Honorable the President and Honorable Members of the Senate from the Speaker and representatives of Honorable House of Assembly. The House of Assembly acquaints the Honorable the Senate that they have passed the following bills and desire the consent of that Honorable Chamber, namely, a bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit and to repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act. A bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes. A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes. A bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes. A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Act. A bill for an act to amend the Commercial Entities Service Requirements Act. House of Assembly, Nassau, 6 December 2023. Patricia DeVoe, Speaker.
Laying of documents by ministers.
Madam President, I beg leave to lay on the table of the Senate copies of the following orders. The Industry Encouragement Approved Product Caribbean Bottling Company, Bahamas Limited, Order 2023. The Industries Encouragement Approved Manufacturer Caribbean Bottling Company, Bahamas Limited, Order 2023. The 2000 revised edition of the Laws, Omitted Acts, Order 2023, and the 2017 Law Revision Order 2023.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Madam President, I beg leave to lay on the table of the Senate copies of the following regulations: the Price Control General Amendment Number 10 Regulations 2023 and the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements General Regulations 2023.
Order the documents be brought up. Order the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Yes, Madam President, I beg leave to lay on the table of the Senate copies of the following directions: the Public Debt Management Bahamas Registered Stock 2024 Directions 2023 and the Public Debt Management Bahamas Registered Stock Number 2 2024 Directions 2023.
Order the documents be brought up. Order the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
And none at this time, Madam President.
Communications by ministers. Communications by senators. Questions. Answers to questions. Presentations of petitions. Appointment of select committees. Report of committees. First reading of bills.
Madam President, I beg leave to introduce and have read for a first time a bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempt limited partnership and for connected purposes.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved that the following bill be read for a first time. Investment Condominium Amendment Bill 2023. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
For the first reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I beg leave to introduce and have read for first time a bill for an act to amend International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes. As many are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes.
For the first reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I beg leave to introduce and have read for first time a bill for an act to amend the Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment company into an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read first time and table. A bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium into an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes. And for connected purposes. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
For the first reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I beg leave to introduce and have read for first time a bill for an act to amend the Commercial Entity Substance Requirement Act.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time and table. A bill for the Commercial Entity Substance Requirement Act. As many are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act.
For the first reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I believe to introduce and have read for first time a bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time and tabled. A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act. As many are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act.
For the first reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I beg leave to introduce and have read for first time a bill for an act to amend the Anti-Doping in Sports Act.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time and tabled. A bill for an act to amend the Anti-Doping in Sports Act. As many are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Anti-Doping in Sports Act.
For the first reading of bills.
And none at this time, Madam President.
Further, sorry. Second reading and committal of bills.
Yes. Madam President, it is our intention to move into the second reading and committal of the, what I would term the financial services bills that we just read for first time, and we do so, Madam President, we request the concurrence of the opposition to move through all stages of the bill on today without the need of the 24 hours notice.
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Handfield. Do we have your, does the Senate have your concurrence with respect to these bills?
Madam President, we understand on this side the necessity and urgency of the bills before this chamber, and we so concur.
Thank you so much for your cooperation, Senator Handfield.
Thank you, Madam
Senator
President, and once
Hawkins,
again,
please
thank
proceed.
the
Thank you.
side opposite for their concurrence for us to move through all stages of these bills today, Madam President. And I greet all my colleagues. Madam President, balance. Balance is the word that we would use to describe our objective when it comes to financial services and the development of the financial services industry. We seek constantly that balance between being world-class, compliant, well-regulated jurisdiction and maintaining and enhancing our competitiveness by improving our product offerings and developing new products that would be attractive to the industry. And so, as we debate today the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill and the Commercial Substance Requirement Bill, those represent our continued efforts to enhance our regulation and compliance as a financial services jurisdiction. As we move to the investment, the ICON Amendment Bill 2023, the International Business Companies Amendment Bill 2023, and the Exempt Limited Partnership Amendment Bill 2023, Madam President, these represent our commitment to being responsive and nimble and answering the call by the financial services industry, the private sector, in enhancing our competitiveness and in addressing developments in the industry and anticipating new developments in the industry, positioning ourselves through amendments to our legislation for our industry to take advantage of opportunities that arise. Madam President, and so firstly I will speak briefly to the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill, the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Bill 2023, and we have laid, in the time when we laying of documents, we laid the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Regulations. As you would be aware, Madam President, the Bahamas is undergoing a series of assessments with the OECD, Forum on Harmful Tax Practices, and the European Union's Code of Conduct Group. These assessments have an impact on the regulatory and landscape of the Bahamas financial services industry. By way of background, Madam President, the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices monitors the country's implementation of the global standard on substantial activities in low or nominal tax jurisdictions. And the Bahamas is so classified as a low or nominal tax jurisdiction, although I imagine some Bahamians might not agree with that classification. Madam President, I attended the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices meeting in October of this year.
Yes.
And we heard the Secretariat's conclusions regarding the Bahamas' economic substance regime. At this juncture, Madam President, the Bahamas regime is rated as not harmful. However, the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices Secretariat issued 3 recommendations to the Bahamas, 3 recommendations. In particular, they, number 1, urge the Bahamas to verify its statistical data. Secondly, encourage the Bahamas to continue to undertake compliance actions, including action beyond desk-based reviews, specifically with respect to be out of scope, pure equity holding companies, and foreign tax residence claims. So they want to continue to compliance actions, and they urge the Bahamas to undertake the required exchanges of information under the standard with respect to all relevant entities as required by jurisdictions without a fully equipped monitoring mechanism. At a time in October, Madam President, the European Union penned the Bahamas' name on its list of non-cooperative jurisdictions. And to this day, unfortunately, the Bahamas' name remains on that EU list. I would like to highlight, however, Madam President, that there are cross-cutting issues with respect to the measures that the Bahamas has to take to satisfy the requirements of the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices and the EU. And the new provision contained within these bills will address the concerns of the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices Secretariat and the EU Code of Conduct Group, and we got that commitment from them in our. These actions that we are now taking will satisfy their remaining concerns. So, and the purpose of this exercise is to have the Bahamas' name and recommendations removed from those listings. The proposed amendments to the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act will allow the Bahamas to conduct exchanges on all relevant entities as required by jurisdictions without a fully equipped monitoring mechanism. And the Bahamas is currently exchanging information utilizing a standard monitoring mechanism designation. And these amendments allow the Bahamas to fulfill its obligations under the standard. And what we want to do is we want to be in a position to request an assessment for a fully equipped monitoring mechanism, the FEM, the fully equipped monitoring mechanism, in April 2024 in the meeting of the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices. So we want to get out of the standard reporting mechanism to a fully equipped monitoring mechanism, which would put us in a better position. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, Madam President. Further, the modifications to the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act will accommodate future changes in the global standard on substantial activities in low or nominal tax jurisdictions. And when there are developments to the standard, the provisions of this act will encompass the evolving standard, so we don't have to come here every time there's a change. The amendments will allow the authority responsible for the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act to successfully undertake the procedures involved with the exchange of information under the Act, in addition to the exchange of information under the International Tax Cooperation Act or Multilateral Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance matters, without being in breach of the confidentiality provisions of the Act. And so in the introduction of the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Regulations enhances the economic substance legislative framework, as there is a requirement for further clarity in this area of the law, thereby affording industry stakeholders a better understanding of the concepts and expectations. As a result, the response and data received from industry stakeholders will be more detailed and aligned with the provisions of the law. So the regulations will assist them in coming into compliance. The processing and analysis of the data will be greater, and the data transmitted to reportable jurisdictions will be of a superior quality. Likewise, Madam President, the main feature of the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment would allow the Ministry of Finance to request a search of the beneficial ownership secure tax system, the BOSS system, and procure first-hand information on the ultimate owner of an entity incorporated or registered in the Bahamas for the purposes of complying with exchanging information under the International Tax Cooperation Act and Commercial Entities Substance Reporting Act. So a sort of blind spot in the legislation was Ministry of Finance itself, which is the competent authority could not request information on beneficial ownership. And so we're fixing that. And through the aforementioned amendments, Madam President, the Bahamas would have a comprehensive legal framework capable of responding to the ebbs and flows of the financial services industry, thereby enabling the Bahamas to sustain its competitive nature and its position as a leading international financial services center. And so, Madam President, our aim is to be in a position so that when there are changes to the international standard, we do not have to constantly amend our legislation. That is to do with compliance, regulation, ensuring that we are a jurisdiction that comports with the international best standards on financial services regulation. As we move to the other bills that we are addressing today, Madam President, the Investment Condominium Amendment Bill, the International Business Companies Amendment Number 2 Bill 2023, and the Exempt Limited Companies Act. Those are on the part of the scale, Madam President, where we talk about promotion and our need to ensure that through the evolution of our legislation, introduction of new products and structures, we remain competitive and, in fact, are at the head of the scale. Madam President, at this point, I would like to thank the Honorable Attorney General and his team for the speed with which they executed, developed these amendments, went through the process whereby we can have them here today. These are the results, Madam President, largely, in large part, of the Financial Services, Bahamas Financial Services Board, in collaboration with the private sector and the Ministry of Economic Affairs, which is responsible for financial services promotion, and its recent promotional tour of 3 Brazilian cities. And as we interacted with clients and service providers, including lawyers, accountants, financial and corporate service providers, Madam President, we went there concerned about some changes in legislation that could potentially have impact on our financial services industry. We came out with a, very, very positive outlook, because through our discussions, we realized that, yes, these are some potential challenges with these changes, but they also present some opportunities. And the opportunities can be realized if we did some changes to our legislation to provide options to clients. And indeed, from our discussions there and subsequent discussions with the private sector and with industry groups following that promotional tour, Madam President, we are now in a position to believe that what we are doing here today will provide opportunity not only to preserve business in the light of changing international legislation, but indeed it provides an opportunity for increased business for service providers, including banks, financial and corporate services providers, and I'm talking about financial corporate services providers that are Bahamian-owned, Madam President, not only in the international sphere, but this provides opportunities, particularly when we look at the amendments to the International Business Companies that allows, this amendment principally allows for a demerger of a company, and so instead of a merger of coming together, it allows for a company to demerge, to be split in various parts, and as well the Investment Condominium Amendment Bill, which allows the conversion of an investment condominium to certain other entities, and the same with the Exempt Limited Partnership Amendment, which allows for the conversion of the exempt limited partnership into an investment condominium fund and vice versa. Madam President, these amendments would allow for an increase of business in the Bahamas. So before our close interaction with the service providers in Brazil, which provides a substantial amount of clients for the Bahamas' industry. Coming out of there, we were able to move swiftly, as I said, thanks to the AG and his team, to put in place and to be in a position that we are debating these amendments that we are very, very encouraged will lead to an increased amount of business for our financial services providers. And so I would say to those involved in the financial services industry, we are very familiar, with the declarations that the demise of our financial services industry is. And I dare say that every time we have been counted out, we collectively over the years have found ways to pivot and to shift. And so when one area of the market becomes less attractive to us, we are able to be very nimble, take advantage of other evolving opportunities. And so I say, particularly to those in the financial services industry, but throughout the Bahamas, Madam President, that we are addressing some bumps in the road, but there's reason to be optimistic going into 2024. And this is a good time at the end of the year to start to project and look forward. The economy is growing, as indicated by the Bahamas National Statistical Institute and the IMF. We recently celebrated 8 million visitors, a record. Going into 2024, we expect that strength to continue. Our debt is on a downward trajectory, as supported by reports of the central bank, et cetera. The deficits are going down.
Say it again.
Employment is up. Opportunities are up. Madam President, the government has embarked on an infrastructure program in the Family Islands, beginning with the roads and the airports. I just attended this morning the launch of an RFP for renewable energy microgrids in the Family Islands. And so there are opportunities, Madam President. And I encourage Bahamians to, as we approach this new year, let's do so with hope and optimism and take advantage of these opportunities that will arise. I encourage particularly those small, medium-sized financial and corporate service providers, and we have many, Madam President, to familiarize themselves with what we're doing here today, particularly as we talk about the demergers and the conversion, and contemplate how they can be in a position to provide those services that will become available, that a demand for will increase. As we go into 2024, as I said, Madam President, let's do so with optimism. We think our best days are ahead. We think the foundation has been laid for continued growth in this economy, and we invite Bahamians throughout the gamut, across all areas of the economy, Madam President, to gird themselves and be ready to take advantage of these opportunities that arise. I end where I began, Madam President, and speak of balance. Of course, we look optimistically to the future. We know that there are, of course, certain risks that will always attend our economy, including external factors. Nonetheless, we believe we have an administration in place that is committed, as we see here today, to move swiftly to respond to these developments and put the Bahamas in a position to continue to be a choice destination, particularly when it comes to financial services. Thank you, Madam President. I so move.
You didn't toot your horn, Bill.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Michael Alcides. Is there a seconder?
Tooted your own horn.
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Pickstock.
Good morning, colleagues. Sorry. Vice President, Senate colleagues, good morning.
Good morning, brother.
Mr. Vice President, before I get into my contribution, on the raft of financial bills. I would, Mr. Vice President, with your leave, I would like to present a brief report detailing my participation in the 16th China, Latin America, and Caribbean Business Summit. With your leave, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, the summit was held from November 2nd to the 3rd. I attended the summit, Mr. Vice President, along with Philip Galanis, the chairman of the Trade Commission. Mr. Vice President, the 16th Latin America and Caribbean Business Summit served as a critical platform for fostering economic trade and diplomatic ties between China and other countries in Latin America and Caribbean regions. Our mission aimed at representing our nation's interests and exploring opportunities for collaboration and mutual benefit. Mr. Vice President, the summit was held at Beijing National Convention Center and brought together more than 1,000 government officials, business leaders, diplomats, representatives of industry organizations, and think tank experts from China, Latin America, and the Caribbean countries. Notable, Mr. Vice President, discussions centered around the digital economy, agricultural technology, culture and tourism, and the green economy. These discussions, Mr. Vice President, provided valuable insight into the current state of affairs and paved the way, Mr. Vice President, for collaboration in these various sectors. During the summit, I had the honor of speaking at a think tank cooperation dialogue at the Business Summit. I addressed the dialogue on the opportunities and challenges of global and regional economic cooperation in a changing and turbulent world. In particular, Mr. Vice President, I spoke about the emergence of digital technology and artificial intelligence. I advanced that these technologies will require increased cooperation at the regional and global levels, and will require increased cooperation, Mr. Vice President, to ensure that there is an equitable and a robust regulatory framework to ensure that they are developed and used in a manner that supports the common good, Mr. Vice President. I also took the opportunity to speak about the negative impact of climate change on the small and vulnerable economies of the Caribbean. I highlighted the fact that Hurricane Dorian, a Category 5 storm, destroyed 1/4 of the GDP of the Bahamas in a matter of hours. Nearly 1/3 of the goods exported depends on the ocean. These are under threat, Mr. Vice President, by ocean warming, microplastic pollution, and coral bleaching. I emphasize, Mr. Vice President, there are real opportunities for greater collaboration between China, Latin America, and the Caribbean to work collaboratively to address the impact of climate change on our countries and to support efforts at mitigation and adaptation. Mr. Vice President, looking ahead, the summit outcomes lay the foundation for strengthened ties between the Bahamas and China, as well as other participating nations. The potential for future collaboration is significant, particularly, Mr. Vice President, in the areas I mentioned previously. I pointed to several measures to improve trade between China and Caribbean, in particular the Bahamas. Firstly, Mr. Vice President, enhancing the trade facilitation and logistics infrastructure to reduce the cost of exporting and importing goods, such as improving the port efficiency, customs clearance, and transportation networks. Secondly, Mr. Vice President, promoting the diversification and value addition of the Caribbean and Bahamian export to China, such as exploring new markets for seafood, tourism, financial services, and cultural products and services. In conclusion, my participation in the 16th China, Latin America, and Caribbean Business Summit was a valuable opportunity to advance our nation's interest and strengthen international relations. The discussions held during the summit positioned the Bahamas for enhanced collaboration with China and other participating nations. Mr. Vice President, at this time, I appreciate the Ministry of Economic Affairs, led by Senator the Honorable Michael Alcides, the Bahamas Trade Commission, led by Philip Galanis, and our Deputy Chairman, Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin, for their support in facilitating my attendance at this critical summit. And I look forward to future engagement on matters related to our trade relations. Thank you. Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, I am very encouraged, Mr. Vice President, by the report by the Minister of Economic Affairs, Senator the Honorable Michael Alcides, as he laid out the positive trajectory that our economic affairs is headed in. And this has caused for our country to be excited, all across our country, every Bahamian, to be excited about the positive trajectory that our country is headed in. It's indeed beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Yes, 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 yes.
Everywhere I go.
Presents for everybody.
Everywhere I go, Mr. Vice President.
Presents for everybody.
Wonderful festive decorations in Parliament Square and across the Capitol. My hope and prayer, Mr. Vice President, is that the Christmas spirit will calm those in dispute, bring peace, Mr. Vice President, to the wearing, and those on the other side, Mr. Vice President, and agitate and eliminate the harsh political rhetoric which has taken over certain segments of Bahamian political life at this time, as we see played out in the media, particularly those on the other side, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, good governance requires astute, efficient, intelligent, and swift action and remedy. Today before us, Mr. Vice President, we have this assortment of financial services bills and/or amendments which are clearly designed to maintain the competitiveness and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in world markets, and in particular areas of these that matters before us today seek to address and redress. Mr. Vice President, the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Economic Affairs, Mr. Vice President, is again distinguishing. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, for just...
Say it again. Start from the beginning.
Mr. Vice President, I clearly...
Please continue from where you're at. Our colleagues have agreed to settle down. They're excited about the bills.
I note, Mr. Vice President. Thank you. The Honorable...
From the Attorney General.
The Honorable Attorney General is again, and Minister of Economic Affairs, again distinguishing their portfolios with the clear and present evidence that the Bahamas will not be left behind or be found lagging or insufficient in getting up to speed on legislation to further nourish and nurture and protect our financial services industry.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Vice President, for my own part, I am impressed with the diligence of the professionals up at the AG's office who, in this tranche of pieces before us today, are displaying a keep an articulate awareness and knowledge of the volatility and strength of the international markets and the arenas in which our nation's financial services industry must be out front, Mr. Vice President, and on track and target of our competitors. The Honorable Attorney General has broken down, and the Minister of Economic Affairs in particular, has broken down the intent and substance of these pieces before us today. And my own part and that of colleagues know we take and identify with the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Economic Affairs' mission to keep us and this country out front. Madam President, in addressing the Register of Beneficial Amendment Bill 2023, which the Minister of Economic Affairs eloquently summarized for us, the proposed amendments detailed in the Robo Amendment Bill, which is the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill 2023, pertains to Section 12(6) of the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act 2018, allowing the Ministry of Finance to request searches of the beneficial owner secured search system, namely BOSS, from designated entities. Madam President, by way of background, the Robo Act established an electronic beneficial ownership database mandating registered agents to put and maintain necessary information for entities under their responsibility. The Ministry of Finance, serving as the competent authority, proposes these amendments to facilitate formal requests for BOSS searches, aligning with its responsibility for international agreement and standards. The Ministry's access to BOSS is critical for meeting international obligations, particularly under agreements related to exchange of information. Requests may involve personal identification and beneficial ownership data, necessitating external procurement through production notices, Madam President. The proposed amendment, Madam President, ensures the ministry's ability to conduct searches without notifying the subjects under investigation in line with international agreements. Madam President, I support the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill 2023. Madam President, moving on to the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Amendment Bill 2023 before us today, it seeks to simply tidy up, or in more stronger language, Madam President, give clarity to areas of reporting under our international obligations. I will move quickly on this issue, as my sentiments and remarks in debate earlier this year on this act will trouble my conscience and beg me to repeat and amplify how much I feel about the former colonial and imperialist taskmasters, Madam President. The bill aims to modify the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act, enabling the Bahamas to fulfill its commitment as a jurisdiction regarding the standard monitoring mechanism for exchanging information on all entities engaged in relevant activities. Additionally, the amendment seeks to eliminate the strong recommendation from the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices. For context, the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act 2018 initially introduced annual reporting for commercial entities conducting relevant activities in the Bahamas. Although the 2018 Act has been replaced by the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act 2023, the fundamental requirements remain similar. This ensures the Bahamas aligns with the criteria for a no or only nominal tax jurisdiction and qualifies for a fully equipped monitoring mechanism. designation under the global standards for substantial requirements. Madam President, I support the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Bill 2023. Madam President, moving on to the other bills, namely the amendment to the International Business Companies Act, Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Bill, and the Investment Condominium Bill, Madam President. These amendments is another clear indication of the due diligence of the Honorable Minister of Economic Affairs and Attorney General. Here we have an opportunity to competitively, Madam President, actively pursue the lucrative Brazilian market. These amendments take into account the peculiarities of Brazilian legislation and how we on this side of the Atlantic are providing safe, efficient, and transparent engagement and encouraging Brazilian investment. Taking into account the tax requirements in Brazil for its citizens and certain financial happenings expected in that South American country early in the new year. The Attorney General Department has before us these amendments, which will continue to assure the Brazilian investor in the Bahamas of our readiness to accentuate what we do with what is also beneficial to that Brazilian in their homeland. It is simple, Madam President. The bill is seeking to harmonize the provisions of national legislation with current Brazilian tax legislation, upon which the Investment Condominium Act 2014 modeled. Madam President, it is expected that these amendments will be most attractive to the Bahamas clients and advisors. Brazil remains the largest target market for the Bahamas, and indeed for many competitor centers. These changes will be welcomed by Brazilian clients and will clearly communicate, Madam President, the Bahamas' value as a committed partner and an attractive destination for their capital and investments. I support these amendments of the IBC Amendment Bill 2023, the Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Bill number 2, 2023, and the Investment Condominium Amendment Bill 2023. Madam President, lastly, the Financial Intelligence Unit Bill. This bill seeks to make amendments. One, Madam President, with the introduction of a new Financial Intelligence Unit Act, and two, modifications to the Financial Intelligence Transactions Reporting Regulations, Madam President. The proposed FIU bill and amendments to the FI are aimed to enhance and modernize the institutional and operational framework governing the Financial Intelligence Unit in the Bahamas. As a practicing attorney, Madam President, and as an occupant on this side of the table, I emphasize this side of the table, Madam President, I hold the view that the fullest endorsement of the Honorable Attorney General's opinion on these matters before us need no nuance with any but legal opinion. I'm a whole, and furthermore, Madam President, it is so easy for others outside the country to misread any legal pre-adventure one may seek to go on, Madam President. Madam President, I support these pieces of legislation, and I congratulate, Madam President, again, the Honorable Attorney General, and I would say to him, roar, lion, roar! Madam President, I have a feeling that the nation and its people are recognizing, Madam President, and appreciating, Madam President, the dispatch you bring to your portfolio and the maturity, Madam President, you show in this place, Mr. Attorney General. Madam President, I thank you.
Good job, good job. Good job. I got an opening at the office.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Darren Pickstock. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act, demerging an international business company and for converting investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is once again a pleasure to stand in this honorable place, and I join you in extending birthday greetings to our colleague, Mr. Ronnie Duncombe. We're here to contribute on the compendium of bills that deal with the regulation of our offshore financial service industry. Madam President, I can't lie, but this feels a little deja vu, as we ended the last parliamentary session earlier this year in July by debating amendments to the IBC Act, the Exempt Limited Partnership Act, and the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act. 5 months ago, I rose in support of those amendments. I recognize that the offshore financial services industry is our second largest industry, and that our jurisdiction has experienced more than its fair share of scrutiny by tax-hungry jurisdictions. They would seek to dismantle our second largest means of income in order to expand their tax base. We are in a constant tug of war of meeting expectations and having expectations changed. Our ability to conduct business globally is a significant risk as a result of this ongoing blacklisting. Just ask our insurance industry. In the Blueprint for Change, they promised to take immediate steps to clear all pending matters to be removed from the blacklist. It's 2 years later, but perhaps the third time is the charm. Because, Madam President, we must fix it. We must remain competitive. We fixed it before under the previous administration. We were deemed not harmful, and there's too much at stake for our jurisdiction. Our ability to conduct business outside these borders and our reputation depends on it. These pieces of legislation are essential to the development of our offshore financial services industry. But what about domestic needs? It is time to look after our home affairs. They promised a robust national and economic development agenda that prioritizes behaviors. 5 months ago, I likened this administration's inattention to local issues to Nero fiddling while Rome burned. We have debated pieces of financial legislation in this place, but they've all mainly had international implications. But what about the issues that need addressing here at home? They promised mortgage relief in the Blueprint for Change, and yet there's been no amendment to the 2017 Homeowners Protection Act to give homeowners greater statutory protection or to clarify the convoluted process for banks outlined in the Act. I had the pleasure of spending a great deal of time in Bimini recently. There is one bank, and the real way to transfer money and withdraw cash is to use the gaming house, because at least they replenish their ATM. The Bahamas is an archipelago. How can we improve the ease of doing business on the Family Islands if full banking services are not readily available?
You can open one.
And what about the promise to Bahamianize the commercial banking sector by granting more commercial banking licenses to Bahamians?
Apply.
These aren't new promises. They are promises that the PLP made to the Bahamian people as part of the New Day package deal. These promises that impact our daily lives remain unfulfilled. Maybe because they don't attract the flair of international meetings and international travel. But good governance requires fulfilling the promises made to the electorate. The PLP government needs to fix this blacklist problem. The PLP government needs to fix this blacklist problem already and address their minds to local matters and to home affairs and fulfill the promises they made to the Bahamian electorate. Madam President, last week we celebrated National Women's Week. The women continue to be integral to the development of the Bahamas. There's a famous quote that when you educate a woman, you educate a generation. We are surrounded by women making significant strides in traditionally male-dominated roles like frontline politics and technology. But in 2023, when the Jetsons promised us flying cars, women are still trying to convince the world that they have an inherent right to determine the most intimate feminine moments of our lives. I am an 80s baby, and 90s hip-hop was the greatest hip-hop era. And Tupac said 30 years ago, and since a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one. So will the real men get up? I know you're fed up, ladies, but keep your head up. And this still rings true. We must continuously repeat this most profound lyric, not only because he declared that men do not have the right to dictate what we do with our lives, but because he recognized that this is not a woman-only battle, that men and women must come together to make real change. Men must continue to advocate for women's rights. And it's not simply matters like marital rape and abortion, but in all matters where women are more adversely impacted than men, like passing on citizenship, or confronting body shaming biases. Too often men scatter and say, that's a women's issue. Let the women talk about it. But we must so that we can make the journey a little easier. If we can move one hurdle, then my daughter, Senator Seymour's daughters, Senator Henfield's granddaughter, Senator Raming's daughter, Senator Halkita's daughter, Attorney General's daughter, Senator Duncan's daughters, Senator Pickstock's daughters, Senator Russell's daughter and granddaughters, and Senator Roll Turner's granddaughters can achieve the dreams that we have for them and so, so much more. To the women of the Bahamas, I say, keep your head up. Madam President, as I close, I'd like to make two special mentions. Firstly, over in Grand Bahama today, they're having a groundbreaking and cornerstone laying ceremony for the facilities of Bahamas Mineral and Manufacturing Corporation Limited. Madam President, this company is going to produce pipes in the Bahamas. Pipes. It's 2023, and we are thinking outside of the tourism and financial services box. I commend Mitchell Thurston Jr. and his team for this innovative business venture. I wish I could have been there today, but we haven't quite evolved being in two places at the same time. Secondly, Madam President, it is 18 days till Christmas, which means it's 90 days till Bay, and the pressure is on. To all of the dedicated and talented men and women that are spending long hours in the shack, that have practiced routines and music for countless hours, keep pushing. And to the families that pick up the slack while we get burned by the glue gun or look for that box cutter that we just had in our hand, thank you for understanding the sacrifices that must be made to make it to Bay. It is the irresistible beat of Junction that courses through the Bahamian spirit. Madam President, I support the bills in this financial compendium, but there are local financial services issues that remain outstanding, and this administration promised to fix them. Time is ticking away.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Michael Abonnet. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin.
Good morning, Madam President. It's good to be back in the Senate, representing the resilient and industrious people of the Bahamas. Madam President, I'd first like to formally offer my congratulations to Minister Fred Mitchell on being re-elected as chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party at our convention held last month. And I'd also like to formally offer my congratulations to the Honorable Kingsley Smith for winning a well-fought battle in West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Kingsley was sworn in as Member of Parliament in that other place yesterday. Congratulations and well wishes to him. I hope that he follows in the footsteps of our dearly departed brother, the Honorable Wilshcombe, in providing strong and robust representation to the people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Madam President, last week was National Women's Week. Please allow me a brief to acknowledge and commemorate National Women's Week. It's a time to celebrate and recognize the incredible contributions women have made and continue to make in our country, and to take a look at how we collectively can face the challenges ahead. Since the pandemic, society has been forever changed. Now more than ever, we are reminded that in times of societal change, we need to push for those changes to be inclusive, equity-driven, and to move closer to a more equal world. Madam President, this government right now is doing some great and innovative things in the country. We're moving deeper into the digital age, innovation and technological advancement at the forefront. We see this in our carbon credits regime, the digitization of the entire government, and the upcoming overhaul of the Data Act, just as some examples. And so with this as a backdrop, I would like us to use this National Women's Week to focus on women in tech, women in STEM, women in innovation, ensuring that women are part of the advancement at each and every level and at every step of the way. In simpler terms, we must use technology to advance gender equality. Madam President, we are here this morning to debate a compendium of financial services bills. When we debate bills like this, we can't look at these in any other light than reform. We are reforming our financial and financial services system to align with international practices. Someone recently asked me, why are we always in Parliament amending these financial services laws? And there are various answers I could have given, but I was feeling a bit philosophical. So I said, international financial system was not designed for us, Madam President. So it follows that it is a natural consequence that it is turbulent for us. The architecture of the international financial system was designed when we were a colony. We were not seen, we were not heard, we were not felt, and that was by design. Now that excuse may have been good enough in 1945 on the heels of the Second World War. It may have even been good enough in 1974 when we achieved independence. But in the third decade of the century, in the year of our Lord 2023, it is that the Bible tells us surpasses all understanding that we are still here, that this system still prevails. But alas, here we are. And so, Madam President, our Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Brave Davis, was most recently attending the United Nations Conference on Climate Change, commonly known as COP. And among the many things he advocated for a realignment of the way in which the world regulates the international financial system. Madam President, the very charter that unites the world by definition, the United Nations, declares that we are all equal. But if we are all equal, we have to first ask how and why we are excluded from the most important places and decisions that affect how we live in this world. If you accept that the Security Council of the United Nations is to guarantee the peace of all peoples around the world, then how does the Permanent Five exclude a continent and a diaspora of people that are responsible for more than 1/6 of the world's population? I speak of Africa and the Caribbean. So, Madam President, our Prime Minister was abroad advocating for a realignment of the system where we don't have a seat at the table because such a seat never existed and was never intended. Madam President, before I move into the bills, I beg your forgiveness for my tardiness this morning. I was a speaker this morning at Consumer International's Global Congress. Consumers International is the global organization for consumer groups around the world. They advocate for a world where everyone has access to safe, sustainable products and services, and bring together over 200 member organizations in more than 100 countries to empower and champion the rights of consumers everywhere. They meet every 4 years to tackle impacting consumers worldwide. This year, the meeting is taking place in Nairobi, Kenya, from the 6th to the 8th. This morning, I addressed the Congress virtually, speaking on consumer protection in the Bahamas, genuine championing, yes, virtually. We do virtuals. How about you send them the link? So this morning I addressed the Congress virtually, speaking on consumer protection in the Bahamas generally, championing our recently passed Consumer Protection Act, but also specifically speaking on our regime of consumer protection in the digital asset space. With the assistance of our Attorney General and the team over at the Securities Commission, I was also able to give the Congress a preview of the changes that this administration intends to make to the DARE Act. So please, Madam President, my apologies, but I was representing our government and our country, spreading the good news of the Bahamas internationally. And yes, Senator Seymour, right from my living room. So, Madam President, I'll turn my attention to the bills before us, namely the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Amendment Bill, the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill, the Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Bill, and the Financial Intelligence Unit Bill 2023. While the system was not designed for us, we are part of the system, and we have an obligation to our citizens to be compliant with international best practices. By amending these bills, we are ensuring that our legislation remains current with global financial standards and requirements. And on a deeper level, these bills protect a key pillar of the Bahamian economy and the jobs of thousands of Bahamian financial services workers. Madam President, the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Amendment Bill will align the Bahamas with EU and OECD standards in economic substance reporting. Specifically, the bill addresses global concerns about tax avoidance and profit shifting. With this amendment, we are avoiding sanctions by enhancing our reputation as a cooperative and transparent jurisdiction. The Bahamas has made extensive progress in addressing the recommendations of the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices, maintained its commitment to take further steps to ensure the application of substantial activities requirements in the Bahamas meets global standards. Madam President, with the amendment of the Register of Beneficial Ownership Bill, we are seeking to enhance the legal framework to combat money laundering and terrorist financing. Our financial system must have robust reporting structures in place to prevent terrorist financing. And we only can achieve this objective ensuring that financial institutions continue to place a deep emphasis on knowing their customers. That is, understanding the full purpose of accounts, expected turnover, and confirming the true benefit of the account holder. Madam President, the Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment No. 2 bill seeks to modernize the existing legal structures governing exempted limited partnerships in the Bahamas. The amendment introduces greater the partnership structures, which will improve the attractiveness of our jurisdiction. In short, Madam Speaker, we must remain current and competitive. This administration is committed to ensuring that the Bahamas remains current and competitive. And so to Senator Barnett Ellis, that's why we continue to come here. While we all have a problem with having to comply with all of these mounting standards, we have a commitment to the Bahamian people to remain current and competitive. And as I've said before, I will say again, if that means coming in this place to debate one word in one piece of legislation 10 times, we'll do that because it saves Bahamian jobs. And that is why we've been elected, Madam President. Yes. Madam President, the International Business Companies Amendment 2 bill is focused on revising the regulatory framework for our international business companies. This includes comprehensive updates to aspects of corporate governance, enhanced reporting requirements, and refined operational protocols. These changes are designed to ensure that IBCs operating in the Bahamas are in line with the latest international business standards, thereby enhancing the country's appeal as a jurisdiction in international business operations. The Investment Condominium Amendment Bill 2023, Madam President, specifically targets the enhancement of the legal framework for investment condominiums, which is a unique investment vehicle in the Bahamian financial landscape. This amendment was strategically crafted to appeal to international investors, and as Senator Pickstock indicated, in particular in Brazil. So this move is part of a broader strategy to diversify the types of investments and sources of capital flowing into the Bahamas, and like I said before, in particular from Latin America and Brazil. And on that note, allow me to speak about the work of the Bahamas Trade Commission. One of our mandates as the Bahamas Trade Commission is to open the lanes of trade of goods and services into the Bahamas and out of the Bahamas. And as part of our mandate, we are going around the world looking for new opportunities for Bahamian businesses and Bahamian entrepreneurs. And so to everyone listening today, please note that the Bahamas Trade Commission is currently planning a trade mission to Brazil. In addition to the financial services aspects of doing business in Brazil, we believe that there's lots of opportunity for Bahamian goods being sold in Brazil, as well as for cheaper and a more diversified product selection of products and services from Brazil into the Bahamas. And so any business persons, entrepreneurs out there with an interest in doing business in America or Brazil, please contact the trade unit at the Ministry of Economic Affairs to get involved in our trade mission. Madam President, moving on to the Financial Intelligence Unit Bill. It provides for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit and to repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act. The bill aims to bolster the unit's capacity in analyzing, monitoring, and reporting financial transactions to effectively combat financial crimes. By upgrading this important entity in the financial regulatory regime, we are solidifying the commitment to maintain a secure and reputable financial sector and identify and address complex financial crimes. Madam President, when we look at the countries comprising the OECD, one would quickly note the presence of competing offshore centers. Some have argued that the principle is do as I say, not as I do. Today, as Bahamian businesses find it a daunting task to open bank accounts in the Bahamas with every increasing due diligence and KYC requirement, in the OECD, reports indicates that some people are able to walk into banks and open accounts in minutes with minimal KYC provided. So, Madam President, it becomes understandably more and more difficult to come to this place and support increasing the complexity of doing business in this country and implementing legislation that further burdens our financial services sector. We know the do as I say, not as I do mantra is unfair, unjust, and wrong. But unfortunately, the power is not in our hands. Blacklisting has consequences, and it now creates a material risk to our entire economy, which, as a government, we cannot allow to happen. We therefore adopt a dual position. We enact the required reforms while also, on the other hand, advocate for a more equitable system. That is all we can do, Madam President. And so our financial services industry remains a key industry in our country, and this government is resolute in its commitment to ensuring that we move from surviving to thriving. These are undoubtedly difficult times, and while it seems like an impossible task, we must protect our financial services industry because the industry supports the incredible pool of talented financial services professionals who have built this industry over the many decades. Madam President, this administration is committed to protecting this industry while simultaneously advocating for global change that would create a more equitable and fair international financial system. And so with that, Madam President, I support the passage of this compendium of financial services bills. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield.
Thank you, Madam President. And I too wish to add my voice to those who've wished a warm and happy birthday to our colleague, Senator Duncombe, a gentleman whom I admire for his work with the young people of this country and the group that he works with, Next Gen, and we wish him all of the best. Madam President, today we gather to, among other things, debate yet another compendium of financial bills geared toward the removal of the Bahamas from the infamous black. We hope that this raft of legislation we pass here today will cause us to become compliant with the international community's many mechanisms that they use to impact our financial industry in a negative way here in the Bahamas and our standing in. At the outset, permit me to note that His Majesty's loyal opposition in this place, as demonstrated in the other place, we support all efforts necessary to safeguard this most important and vital industry. There is no division between us as administrations when we speak to this issue of the financial sector and circling the wagons and standing around the flag when it comes to protecting the professionals within that industry and that industry itself, as it is a very important in our economic foundation. We support, as always we do, any effort made by the government that is intended to ensure Bahamian industry, support Bahamian professionals, and safeguard this very integral sector of our economy. It is our shared view on this side that no one can definitely challenge the veracity, integrity, and legitimacy of our efforts to operate an above-board financial services sector. No one. And I believe we can stand toe-to-toe, Madam President, with any country in the world when it comes to putting in place the practices and the laws and the regulations and rules that is required to participate safely in this industry. It is also our considered view that we are too often subjected to different standards than larger countries relative to their tax reporting and cooperation issues. We don't in this country anything different than most others do who participate in the sector. We could look to the north of us and look at Delaware. We could go across the pond and look at Guernsey and Jersey and the rest of them, and we're right there alongside them, doing what they do, but we do better, I believe, than what they do. And so I think sometimes we are a bit over-regulated. We've heard it over and over, how it is so difficult to open a bank account in the Bahamas. And you know, the sad part about it is not that these issues are not just impacting the companies and organizations that are probably listed elsewhere in the world that come to work and live in the Bahamas, but they impact Bahamians on the ground. Because if we remain blacklisted and we have these corresponding banking issues, the man on top his credit card or her credit card and be able to make simple payments. And that is an issue for us. That's a real issue for us. It is our further view that the sector of the Bahamas are among the finest in the world, bar none. We are among the finest in the world. We are a mature, effective, credible, and properly regulated jurisdiction that is replete with experienced Bahamians who help to shape this industry whilst earning the respect and admiration of their counterparts in this region and beyond. No one should doubt our capacity to effectively compete, survive, and progress on a level playing field in this pivotal industry. That is why, Madam President, we support efforts aimed at causing our industry to further develop and progress in the way that we believe it ought to. I don't believe we're going to hear anybody in here lay blame today to the past administration for the issues that we face today. I don't believe that. I don't believe that, not after not after being in office for the past 2 years plus. I don't think that should come up today. We have faced these issues since the time of the Right Honorable Hubert Ingram. I think it may have been around 2000 something, or was it 2008? When we were blacklisted for the first time. I don't recall the date. I don't recall the date. We were blacklisted for the first time, and people gave him holy hell, you know, because he sought, it was 2000, early in 2000, because he to get us off the list. And I remember many pundits in the sphere of operation. I remember that he received, indicating that oh, you caused all our business to go to Barbados and elsewhere, Cayman Islands and all the rest of it. But it's caught up with everybody. And so he acted then, as we continue to act now, to safeguard the industry from these incursions that we suffer. As we all know, the country was named among the jurisdictions on the European Union's list of non-cooperative countries for tax purposes. This EU's commission is comprised of about 27 nations. And you know, I heard the Honorable Foreign Minister yesterday in that other place speak to some of the meetings that he's had with these people, and I think Foreign Minister has experienced it since the time of our first blacklisting, and foreign ministers all across the region in particular, developing countries around the world have been invited to sit in these meetings where we lament the fact that we don't believe we're looked at fairly. And just as he indicated, President, most of these people that you talk to tend to lay the blame on others for where we are, where we find ourselves on these lists, and they tend to pass it off. We've seen in our time in office, even individual countries that are a part of these regimes, the OECD, the FATF, and the European Union Commission, we've seen these countries individually. I recall in our last administration, I think it was France, who stepped outside of their regime to sanction us. And so there are no set rules for the way these people look at how they treat with us in this industry. Because if you're a part of a regime, the regime is satisfied that we've done all we could to remove ourselves from these odious lists. And then you as an individual country, you step outside and say, well, I'm going to sanction them too. And it's a difficult position to be in. Now, can we be more diplomatic in our language, Attorney General? I think we can. You know, I think we made the point about knees and foot on necks and George Floyd, connotations and the rest of it. You know, because you say these things publicly, and then you made the point. You made the point. That's all well and good, right? And I'm not saying to back down from anybody. I'm saying to stand your ground, where you have rights to stand your ground, but also be pliable in the way that you approach it, because it requires diplomacy, the art of diplomacy. Yeah, you gotta keep talking. You gotta keep talking to them, because when you got your hand on the lion's mouth, you should notice. They call you lion. When you got your hand in the lion's mouth, you gotta take it easy around deeper. Right? Yeah. So so you know what happens. You know what happens then, right? Because you still got to go in corridors and meeting rooms and face these same people, and we do so not from a place of capitulation or a place of subservience, because we are a sovereign nation with the right to defend and represent our views. But we also do so from a place of diplomacy, where
That gets us far.
where we try to, where we all recognize the unfair treatment that we get. We all recognize the constant moving at the goalposts. Maybe we should keep you home and send the Minister for Economic Affairs on more of these missions, right? Who I believe is quite more diplomatic in his approach,
I would agree
in his
with that.
approach than you might be. And
agree with
so the present saga,
Yes.
Madam President, which we find ourselves embroiled, became known to us just after the 2021 general elections, we believe, back in December around that time, 2021. And the government had just taken office. And so we were advised that with some optimism that the government would fix the issues and get us off the list. We understand the challenges, we appreciate the problems, but we also have a mandate to get us off of this list so that we can compete fairly in this system like everybody else is. We are now advised that we remain on the list with 15 other nations because we have systemic deficiencies in our economic substance report name, which has resulted in us being labeled as a non-cooperative jurisdiction by the powers that be. Madam President, one of the first things you learn in law school, and I say this all the time, is that the collection of taxes is in the domain of the king. And so I don't know how other people want us to collect their taxes because they don't seek to collect ours. But we know that European countries and others have this real issue with their registered companies that have income more than 700, I think, million euros, which is about $850 million. And so they want us to report on the substance. They you know, long gone are the days from the Bahamas when you could walk down Bay Street and see these brass plates with companies that you never knew what they did or how they existed. That era has long passed. And so they want to know that we're doing real legitimate business. I think we have done all that we can to prove to them that we're doing legitimate business in the Bahamas and in this jurisdiction. And so the only conclusion we can come to now is that they want to dissuade such companies from coming to the Bahamas and doing business with us and cause them to relocate to their jurisdictions. And we're going to fight, we're going to continue to fight for our very survival because our economy depends on it. It won't go away. And we will continue to serve notice to them that we will fight as a nation. You know, we applaud the Prime Minister's efforts at the United Nations, which seek to bring more fairness in the way that we have assessed and the way that we are assessed by countries with whom we are competitors. It is unfair for your competition to judge you in the same game. That's why you have a referee in games, one side or the other, and then you have referees. We believe, you know, I think the government believes that the UN is a more fair referee than our competitors. But we saw, as we were at the United Nations, that when they did the resolution, the main players, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union, and some among 48 other countries, they voted against the resolution. So, you know, it's yeah, all of those people who seek to do us damage, I believe, you know, they voted against it. And so this issue of blacklisting will continue to plague us for as long as we do business in this space. I believe that. They're not gonna just get up one morning and say, you know, leave the Bahamas alone to operate in the space. They have played by all of the rules. They have developed their jurisdiction in a fair way. And so we must therefore, colleagues, we must remain attentive. We must remain nimble. We must be innovative and aggressive in this sphere if we are going to survive and survive as best we can in this and thrive in this industry, as I know we can. So we can be better than the competition, even with the rules that they put us up under. And that's why you're encouraged to always talk to the people in the sector who do it every day, who's been doing it, the experience counts something, who's been doing it every day, and let them. I believe we have come to the place now, though, where the opposition and the government be a part of a collective discussion, always, when it comes to this issue. There are issues. We have to mature, man.
Hold your breath.
I hear you, but we have to mature beyond this point. And some countries, I said, Prime Minister Ingram the other day, in some countries, people who hold high-level clearances for security and otherwise in governments, when they leave office, they take those clearances with them. You know why? Because they should be able to call the person who's in office now, say Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, he should be able to call Mike Pompeo, who was his predecessor in office, and say, what were you thinking when you made this decision? What was in your contemplation when you did this, right? And so we need to mature to that point of democracy so that we can secure ourselves, because we're in this together. Like it or not, you know, it sounds cynical in a world where first past the post gets the goal. It sounds very cynical, right? But it's something to aspire toward, you know. And so, Madam President, we got to seek this. The point I'm trying to make is we got to seek to stay ahead of the curve. We got to anticipate these people, and then we got to put the right pieces in place. I know the AG had lamented the inadequacies of the portal, and I think he will speak to that today to let us know where we are with the portal, because, you know, reporting has to be timely, and the reporting has to run across systems, and which brings me to the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit, and the bill that we have before us, which I am wrapping up, my brother. I thought you'd want me to go on today. I mean, such lamentations, such lamentations for us in our country. The Financial Intelligence Unit bill before us today, because the other bills are significant, but I think this is the more significant one, which repeals and replaces the Financial Intelligence Unit Act, will hopefully help us to achieve the objective of more eyes on how we do financial services and how we move money through the country. And the Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU, Madam President, has a very serious statutory role to play in facilitating the free exchange of information. And, you know, we've gone as far as having automatic exchange of information in this regime. You know, where as soon as it happens, the relevant parents are informed. This is what is going on in the Bahamas. This is what is going on in New York. This is what is going on in Jamaica. And so that we can keep an eye on transactions that may want to be conducted by bad actors, transactions that lend to terrorism and money laundering. These type of transactions is what the Financial Intelligence Unit is looking after. And so the FIU in this regard, FIUs all across the world are uniquely positioned to support efforts intended to counter terrorist financing and money laundering. FIU must be in a position to share potentially harmful information with other FIUs anywhere in the world, and that are part of this 170 FIUs which come on active that they call the Egmont Group. It's very interesting that they can cooperate in that way, and it's very necessary that they do, Madam President. The unit must be at liberty to respond readily, securely, and in real time in financial intelligence to fight money laundering, terrorist financing, and other such nefarious efforts. Madam President, as I wrap up now, I too wish to add my voice to the words of approbation spoken by my learned friend here, Senator on my side, and I'm sure Senator Michael Ellis, and I'm sure Senator Seymour, if she speaks today, would like to say something about women as well. As we heard last week, we celebrated Women's Week. And so as I take my seat, I also pay homage to the inestimable contributions of Bahamian women to the growth and development of our country, and our region, and the world. Women like the Right Honorable Dame Janet Gwyneth Boswick, Her Excellency Ambassador Miriam Bethel, Dame Ivy DeMont, Dame Joan, Her Excellency the Most Honorable Reverend Dr. Cynthia Pratt, who now serves as our Governor General, Dr. Merceline Dalregis, Dame Marguerite Penling, right? You know.
Be careful not to leave anybody out now.
No, I'm not gonna. I had a wonderful conversation with Dame Marguerite at the last funeral we had. You know, and she's always a pleasure to speak with, because she's a fount of knowledge, of the history of our country and development of it, and we should all cherish, you know, the opportunity to sit and speak with them. And I wish I could see all of them write memoirs. And there's something she always shares that my wife loves. It's either you got it or you don't have it. You know, and I share that with her. And so how do you not recognize the contributions of women like Lynn Pike from Holybesco, Bahamas? How do you not recognize these contributions? Like my wife Deidre, who kept my boys while I sailed around the country, trying to defend and protect our borders. How do I recognize? How do I not recognize women like my sisters, my nieces, and cousins and others, and the women who serve in this place with us, Madam President, who serves in this place with us? How do you not recognize them? But there's such a long way for women to go. You look around this place and you see 4 women represented here. In the other place, there's a number. Some countries have actually made laws, legislation, to protect the ratio of men and women in these places, in the halls of Parliament and Cabinet and in other places. Women lead in every sphere of our country. They're not equally and so when I used to have these councils with the European Union, you know, they ask you all kinds of questions, but women represented, how is this and how is that? And I said, well, if you look at our courts, you'd find that it's replete with women judges. If you look at a cabinet, we have women in the cabinet. We have women. Excuse me. We have a female president of the Senate. We have a female who's Speaker of the House of Assembly. But we still have a long way to go. And we have to stop sending women home. We're sending women home without further, you know? So you can't just send women home and then on the other hand, say you want to support women. You can't do that. You're speaking with forked tongues when you do that. And when I don't call any names to embarrass anybody, but you know what I'm talking about. Stop sending them home. Stop sending them home. You can answer any question you want. The question I want you to answer, you won't answer. How much money you give out? That's what I want you to answer. Answer that for me today when you get up. To these settlements you had. Yeah, that's the one I want you to answer. Answer that one for me. Now, economic affairs, I promised that I told you, Madam President, I'm sitting down right now. Before they ring the bell. Before they ring the bell, right? I told you, I would say this, Senator Alcides. You would have silenced a lot of voices. You know what I'm talking about, those fringe voices that are promising Bahamians that they can get money from anywhere else except hard work, right? Had we used that $500,000 that we used for Christmas decorations and given, and you can consider.
What you would have done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I had the power, I would do it right now.
Did you do it last administration?
No, I wasn't in that area last administration, and we didn't spend $500,000 on decorations. How much we spent on decorations? Huh? I would have given. Madam President, here's what I would have done. I'm not going to be distracted. Here's what. Madam President, here's what I. Yeah, remember. Here's what I would have done. I would have given. Madam President, I would have given each Bahamian $1,000. $1,000 each Bahamian. It's only 400,000 of us. And if you had a baby that could show he was a Bahamian, Mr. Weiss, I would have given them $1,000 and call it a VAT rebate or whatever, right? And so everybody could have a good Christmas this year, and use 100,000 on the tree,
What you want to do
right?
with COVID money?
Use 100,000 on the tree, and let everybody have a good Christmas. That's what I would. And I commend that to my colleague who sits opposite, Minister of Economic Affairs. He's a fair man. He understands what I'm trying to say here.
Where the money gone? Where the COVID money?
And he would. Him saying where the COVID money gone, they weren't Christmas. They weren't, but how they, so if they leave me alone, I'll sit down, you know. But Bahamians are worrying about how they can pay for the harm in that turkey. The harm in that turkey that they can be was cost prohibitive next time. But that's $1,000 I could find, because we spent that on decorations, Madam President. So that's $1,000 I could find. I ain't talking about no $1,000 out here, ferry out in the ocean somewhere that we got to go harvest, right? Yeah. So we would have silenced that. We would have silenced that, you know. 1,000 to each Bahamian household. That's what I would have done. And so with that, Madam President, I want to wish, but we'll be back here before the end of the season, Lord willing. And so, Madam President, I thank you. And yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Contribution Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour.
Thank you, Madam President.
We didn't spend $500,000 on a tree.
Madam President, I stand in support of this compendium of financial bills that we've established are necessary for the functioning of the industry, namely the Financial Intelligence Unit Bill 2023, Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Amendment Bill 2023, Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Number 2, Bill 2023, International Business Companies Amendment Number 2, Bill 2023, Investment Condominium Amendment Bill 2023, Register of Beneficial Owner Amendment Bill 2023, and Commercial Entities Substance Requirements General Regulations 2023. And Madam President, before I get into that, if you would allow me, I'd like to extend heartfelt sympathy to the family of the late Ernie Mackey of Eleuthera, who is the brother of our former Member of Parliament, Ricky Mackey, as well as the late Minnie Hall, who's the sister of Reverend Irene Russell, the pastor of Glad Tidings Tabernacle on Kemp Road. And Madam President, I'd also like to say a special hello to Aunt Phil, my husband's aunt, Cora Bonamy, who I saw on Saturday past in Foxville at the funeral of Ramming, and who said that she watches us in the Senate. And so I did promise to say hello to her. And I'd also like to extend sympathy to the Ramming family at this time, and to all families across the Bahamas who right now face difficulties either because they may have just lost a loved one, or a loved one may have died around this time, or just any time. And so the season, the festive season, does not bring for them the joy and excitement that it does for some of us. Instead, they may be reflective or even, mournful in some way. And so may the persons I mentioned and all the souls faithfully departed rest in peace.
Amen.
Madam President, as was said, last week was National Women's Week, and we are currently observing 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, an international campaign that kicks off annually on November 25th, which is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and it runs for 16 days through to 10th December, which is this Saturday, an International Human Rights Day, and also the birthday of my firstborn and only son, Lyndon Joshua, who I also wish happy birthday at this time.
Happy birthday, Linda.
Thank you all. And so, Madam President, from nurturing families to leading corporations, women in the Bahamas play a pivotal role in every aspect of our nation's development. They are educators, caregivers, leaders, and above all, the backbone of our society. So, therefore, as we celebrate the strides made by women, we must also address the ongoing struggles faced by single women who lead households, in particular in accessing financial services, and determine ways to protect and empower those who are financially vulnerable, especially in this inflationary economy. As noted by Senators Barnett, Ellis, and Hanfield, we face domestic challenges that need to be addressed here at home in financial services, and among them, as would have been alluded to, access to banking services for family islanders and other challenges. And I've spoken to it on previous occasions as well. For us, we live within minutes of an ATM. But the driving distance, those Bahamians, if there's an ATM accessible on some islands like North Andros, is not as short. And of course, when they get there, there may or may not be cash available, as Senator Ellis would have spoken to the challenges in Bimini. And so we have to create, Madam President, a Bahamas for all Bahamians, one where all citizens have equal provisions and protections, regardless of where they live, their gender is, what their socioeconomic status is, or what their abilities are. So that includes persons with disabilities. And so, Madam President, when it comes to financial services, women and other ordinary Bahamians are more likely to face skepticism when trying to access loans or open bank accounts. It's really not easy. You know, as the Senator would have spoken, even for businesses, there are challenges and turnarounds. Imagine ordinary people like single women who manage households. Madam President, with these lower income jobs that many single women have, and some of them may be engaged in part-time or informal employment, that makes it even more difficult for them to really be able to meet whatever the eligibility requirements are for financial services to do business in banks in our country. And some women may not even have assets in their names that they could use as collateral, whether or not for loans or whatever it is they may want to get. And these are all very common requirements in our financial systems. And so when we talk about financial services and when we talk about really what we have to do, regrettably, and continually have to do, because the goalpost continues to move when it comes to our adherence to whatever the international regulatory requirements are, we have to also look within to figure out how we could make the financial services industry more accessible for persons who are in certain socioeconomic situations. And so, Madam President, for women, single women in particular, as I said, even balancing work with child care and household duties, that limits their time and resources, single women, to even access financial services. Madam President, if you need to go into a branch to sort out an issue, or you have some quick account, you know, that could take up your entire day. And so imagine for a cashier, or store clerk, or even a housekeeper who's a single mom, she can't necessarily just take the whole day and go down to a bank to talk about something or discuss something within regular business hours. And Madam President, let me just here for a moment when we talk about single mothers and some of the challenges they face. I've said it before and I will say it again. There's a need to expand affordable daycare. First of all, make affordable daycare available and expand daycare services for shift workers. You know, we live in a country that's not necessarily traditionally 9 to 5 because we're a tourism-driven economy. And so for single women who work shifts, whether in the night they work irregular hours, they struggle to find suitable child care. And the availability of daycare services typically in our country is to start working hours. And that just does not work for persons who work in hotels or they work shift, like countless women in our country. And Madam President, the cost of daycare can also be economically high, and it consumes a significant portion of their income. Madam President, we are so expert at victim blaming in this country. So whenever something happens to a child, and I don't wish harm on any child, you know, the public jury, they start to dissect the situation, and, you know, they're often very hard on parents, Madam President. And while parents are responsible for protecting their children, it's not as easy as we think for some parents. Some parents who work minimum wage, and they don't have anywhere to take their children in order to go to work to perform their jobs. They're sometimes left to either take children into situations that are not ideal to get care while they go to work. Or sometimes parents are working, but the money they make is just enough to cover either the rent or whatever. And so while we may judge that children may not have clean diapers on, or the homes may not be in the condition that we think they should be in based on our own worldviews and our own realities, we have to recognize that the challenges that people face in our country are real. And they're like in stark contrast to the reality that many of us face. So we have to look at how we expand daycare services, and so that they operate during non-standard hours, and so they're also more accessible for women who have children. And again, people don't choose single parenting, Madam President. In many cases, they are wooed by Bahamian men who I have to say are very persuasive. You know, Bahamian men, you know, once they want to win you over, they tell you things, they show you a certain way, and they treat you a certain way, you know, and you're convinced that your happily ever is going to come, Madam President. So, they're sweet on their tongue and sweet on their lips, and you get with them, and they treat you nicely. You see them almost every day until you get pregnant, Madam President, and then they disappear on you. And so the single mothers who had household in our country, I don't think they do so by choice, Madam President. And so now that this is the reality, we have to determine how we help them so that we don't create barriers to good employment, how we empower these women, how we help them to, the same child care expansion that I'm talking about, make that available at some of our institutions like BTVI, so that they're able to build skills, and they're able to have their children cared for, and they're able to work their way out of their socioeconomic status to, better jobs, better opportunities, Madam President. We have to figure out how to make financial services more accessible to women, to mothers in this country. Madam President, likewise, the public transportation in our country really concerns me. Because again, when it comes to victim blaming, we have multiple cases of women who were raped, and one even more recently, taking a ride from a stranger. And again, the, jury of public opinion, they get on the women, and, they start to talk about all sorts of stuff, how Taxi 11 never failed them, etc. But the distance that people have to walk to get home, we don't really identify with it because we drive home. So it's easy to say, oh, you shouldn't catch a ride with a stranger. Oh, Taxi 11 never failed me. Oh, why did you get in the vehicle? But if you live on Gladstone Road, or you live in Coral Harbor, or for the people in who continue to complain that there's no bus service, so they have to walk all the way to Fox Hill Road in order to get on a bus. You're walking, sometimes you've worked all day, you've been on your feet on your job all day, and now you get off the bus, if you manage to catch one, because they come, there's a distance sometimes between when they come, and then when you get to your bus stop, you have to walk for another hour sometimes to get home. So, Madam President, we have to figure out how we enhance the bus service in our country, how we get more routes, how we extend the coverage so that we can improve access to work for women, access to financial institutions if they need to do business, and other essential services. Madam President, perhaps we even need to look at how we provide social assistance programs that cover or subsidize transportation fees. Because if you're making minimum wage and you have to get to work, you have to first take a child to daycare or to school safely, and then you have to get on another bus and get to work and get on another bus and get them, it may be $10, $20 a day. So, Madam President, depending on how much you make, how much your rent is and how much your food costs are, it's not as easy as we think for the ordinary Bahamian to make it in the Bahamas. And so we have to figure out how to make affordable and reliable public transportation more accessible so that we could enable our women and our Bahamian citizens in general to achieve greater financial independence and stability, Madam President. And so, like I said, you know, for those of us who drive, we don't think about these things every day. For those of us who can go to ATMs or go to the bank or even do our banking digitally, you know, whether it's via an app or on the internet, through our desktop computers, we don't realize that for some, even digital access, you know, data, having the proper smartphone to do these things is not as easy. And so we have to figure out how we playing field in our country, Madam President, and we have to continue to work toward protecting and empowering all Bahamians in the Bahamas, regardless of their status. And so, Madam President, financial services is indeed important to us, and we do need to get it right. The industry, as we know, is a significant contributor to the country's economy. However, while we do maintain a strong commitment to financial regulation and compliance with international standards to ensure the integrity and stability of our financial services industry, we also need to work towards a comprehensive plan for the industry, Madam President, as challenges in financial services that require a comprehensive national response and challenges that, as I would have outlined, impact the most vulnerable persons among us, and those are people who, as a government and as leaders, it is our duty to protect. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Reuben Ramming.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to follow the Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate with commending our good Senator Ronnie Duncombe for his work with young men and the level of respect he has garnered throughout his professional life and how he has brought his professional skills and training and access to bear on those young men. He does it for young men in general, but also young men who have the fatherless experience in particular. And anyone who would review world statistics and compare it and reference it with crime statistics and imprisonment statistics and even mental health statistics, you'll find a direct correlation in a very significant way to absentee fathers and lack of girls and boys, men, young men in particular, for not having access to the parental father experience. So for that, I give him thanks. Further, on matters arising out of the debate, I've always had personal compassion and also personal involvement and passion to correcting the matters of public transportation in our country. Apart from acknowledging women in this House, I want us to take a moment to also acknowledge the Disability Week, of which we would have just passed. And last year it would have ended on September, but it would have fallen just on Sunday, the last Sunday passed. And quite frankly, I believe in assisting the persons with disability, not as a favor, but as a very selfish act. Because quite frankly, we all a good piece of conch salad or barracuda away from temporary disability, or which could lead to permanent disability. Many of us find ourselves wearing glasses, and quite frankly, that in itself is a disability. We find ourselves graying and our bones crackling, and what I'm simply saying is that we are all just an incident away, or time away from being in the same category of people who should not be treated with pity, but treated with respect and acknowledged as not just unfortunate victims of something, whether birth or accidental, but as persons who are in a natural stage of life we all could go through. So with that, I commend those persons who live with varying disabilities, and I commend them for their courage. You know, if we were to blindfold ourselves from starting now for the Senate, and make our way to either our offices or our homes blindfolded, you're going to have a small micro glimpse into the eyes of someone who is blind. And you will imagine within that half hour or 30 minutes, or just making your way out of this building, how much courage it takes, how much faith it takes to literally every day make a step in the dark. And so I commend them so much for the things that they do. And that also leads me to retired and elderly persons as well. Nothing is, and I think some of us go through it, said the piss talk, the days when we were healthy and running in school, we still feel that, and then when we do the run, we realize it ain't there no more. Don't let your mind outpace your body. And we find a lot of our senior citizens, that's why it's so important to show them respect. They may be physically hindered as a result of age, but their minds are fresh. And we could help them relive their days by honoring them and celebrating their youth and give them an enjoyable life being. As relates to our public transportation system that was raised by Senator Maxine, that is a major thing, and both governments have failed miserably even when opportunities were presented to them to address these issues. And it's still fixable. Right now, as it is, the current system in its current state is asking for a fair increase, and in its current state, fortunately, that is needed. In its reform state and the state in which it could have been in, you'll find itself being, despite the rise in fuel costs and other costs, profitable, and even more profitable, so much so that with the proper system, you can decrease fares and make more money. And I don't speak off the top of my head, I speak off what I know. But it's unfortunate that over these many decades, we struggle with a system who in itself, just as important as roads are, will impact our standard of living, the quality of service in the workplace, greater efficiency, just by enabling people to move. The good example is our record tourism numbers that we are experiencing. First of all, God get the full glory for that because of our geographical location and the fact that the vast majority of us are goodness far exceed a few deviant ones that make the newspaper and find themselves in prison, that we are a good people and we have something to offer that attracts the tourists to us. But that is also true because of public transportation. The great success that we're seeing now and is projected to increase year over year. We saw the vast expansion from the advent of the upgrade cruise port, facilitated greater numbers and larger numbers of ships. And if you listen to the reports by those who manage the cruise port, they projected a almost like 35% plus increase, and they expect that to increase year over year. And ideas such as home porting, cruise ships to be able to, the passengers to come fly here and then board the cruise ship from here, that help increase the occupancy, and simply also because the Bahamas is a good place with good people.
And a good tourism team.
Good people. They are people. They're good people. And good people. And we have a, they're good people. Good people.
Good tourism team.
Good people and good product. And the thing about it, why that is very, very important. When I started my work in the transportation industry, the motto is very, very simple. It says, to create a disabled and senior citizen-friendly public transportation system, Bahamian-owned and operated, a credit to our nation. To me, that spells it all, Madam President, because if somebody with disability could ride a bus and feel safe, if mama who moves at her age at the pace of a tortoise and cannot move at the pace of a hare anymore, can comfortably and patiently be waited upon and ride a bus with safety, I don't need to factor anybody else in, because everybody else will automatically be serviced excellently when you service these two parts. And we all should be a credit to our nation. Further arising out of the debate was some issues that I actually was going to skip over, because it's one of the first ones triggered from Senator Pistock's comment, but then it would also rose in Senators Darren Henfield's comment. The issue that was bantered around the table as relates to the money during COVID. You know, we've experienced a lot, and I hope we never experience ever again such thing as we experienced in COVID and Dorian. But the facts still remain that something historic and good, no matter the situation we were in at that time, which was not good, happened in the Bahamas governmentally. A precedent has been set. For the first time in the history of the government of the Bahamas, you would see the largest cash distribution of monies directly sent into the pockets of Bahamian people. Amount that exceeded in cash money into the pocket of the Bahamian. If you give people money, you don't rob them. Cash money into the Bahamian people pocket that exceeded over numbers I'm hearing of about $1.2 billion. And it was needed. It was needed. And I find it interesting that those persons, I'm hearing persons calling that a robbery, and it's interesting the mindset that they calling this a robbery. Let me clarify it. Persons who were entitled to one unemployment check, but after 4 injected into them, and they call that robbery. Simply because they needed it, they were down as it related to COVID, the world and the system was shut down, and so we need to be very careful with that, and that was brought in. And Senator Pistock rose on a few matters, and I thought it was fitting because the question was asked about even the declarations. And I found that interesting because my first thought about it with the $500,000 declaration in the context of the Women's Week was that in the previous budget that was passed, and you look through the heads in the previous budget that was passed, there was an exciting item that initially you thought was designed to help battered women and children and protect them, and to build a safe space, safe place for women who suffered violence and their children, et cetera, et cetera. And as we went through heads, we found that there was only $500,000 set aside for them, in which my comment was that's not enough to build a proper triplex, fourplex, in which was agreed. And then we see the large amount of $500,000. I thought that was very, very interesting. We're moving into a very peculiar space, and all amendments in themselves are really maintenance bills, and rightfully so. We are all required to maintain in order to ensure that we continue to punch efficiently and attract the markets to things that have already been designed. Because the investment condominiums was in 2014, and the commercial entities substance requirement bill was 2018. The investment condominium was 2014. And it's so interesting that the investment condominium bill in and of itself was one that we used Brazil's model to inform us, which is good and excellent. If it works for somebody, tailor-make it to yourself. But yet you find right now on the list of persons who have been blacklisted is the same country, Brazil itself, which has over 200 odd million people in it. And so what I'm raising into is this. There is a general situation that I've spoken for and to about in this place, that when it comes to especially this kind of matter that involve the OCDE, and all those European Union and those that would seek to blacklist us, that we need to always remember that this is really an economic war against us as a country, and really it is oppressive. A statement, though harsh, it is really equivalent only because the George Floyd incident in and of itself, if you look at it, I think that was convoluted. But really it is a foot on the neck of small island developing nations. And I would recommend the strong language that we are doing. We have no other choice. It is your job, because it is your job to fight for the Bahamian people, period. And if you don't go fight, get out of the office. And that applies to government. I don't care who it is. You got to take a stand. And quite frankly, if you don't take a stand, how could you motivate other people to want to stand with you? The diplomatic strategy is we need to find those of our kind, starting with small island developing states. When we form ourselves in blocks, then we become collectively equal to larger states that having the same problem, and build these alliances to add pressure sufficiently onto these organizations that is disenfranchising us in so many ways. The reason why I break down things, Madam President, is because I many times feel and have reason to know that a lot of these important things go over the head of the regular Bahamian person. And one of the things I probably ask, maybe Senator Pinder, the AG, and the Minister of Economic Affairs, could add a little bit more colloquial weight to this, or local weight to this, if they are able to quantify in some way the damage this listing caused when we are caught in it, as opposed to when we're in it. For example, if we are floating and our industry is making $1,000, and they drop this blacklisting on us, how does it impact that revenue stream and our function? Because it will help the Bahamian people to know that this blacklisting is costing us X, Y, Z. And until we can win it, we got to play it. So I would like, if possible, in the wrap-up, if there is some way to quantify it for the average man who wants to look at dollars and cents to realize how this impacts. I would have said before how this impacts us in many other ways, except the monetary one is one best suited for the two gentlemen's as I just mentioned, as related to corresponding banking and dealing things with your children, et cetera, and corresponding banking could help us. We could probably appreciate it a bit more by the family islands who don't have the banking system, international banking representations, who now their most efficient ways of doing any kind of money transactions through the web houses. So the web houses have a network that enables them to send them some monies from here to a particular town in the Luthra or one of the other family islands that doesn't have a Scotia or a big bank inside of it. Well, if that wasn't there, then you're going to have to resort back to mailing or somebody coming by the mail boat or all those other different things to get your money across. Well, this is a similar thing on a larger scale. The restrictions could put so much on us, and it could get to the extreme. It can get to the extreme that it interrupts even the flow of our banking and how things be done internationally, things that we appreciate, as simple as you on Black Friday ordering that TV. That involves international transactions between our banks. What I want to state, that even though there are legitimate criticisms that you could find within here, and within the process, even on our part, and I will mention some of them because it is so, and even the AG has been very frank and honest with doing that in one article that he would have spoken to, maybe I think probably around before April, when you clearly, because the article was long, and I think it was very, very efficient. Some of the take-home words that you mentioned was, it was related to a timing issue, and then we were not surprised. First, I take that in two ways. We know they can come at us anyway. Because no matter how we stand it, they can rig something up, this behavioral language, and they can come at us again. And then on top of that, there was a struggle because the old system, which actually did work because we were off it, but it was not efficient. Because a lot of stuff is just in manual, so we had people capable of answering the stuff, but the process of doing is bad, that a new system had to come in, that contributed obviously to some of the things and some of the, and then you see the rush, some months here, and guess what, that ain't nothing new. I remember there were times when the House had to be called in off the Christmas break to pass things for this February inspection. So what I'm simply saying is, you could point fingers and say there were maybe the new administration did some things that might have this, might have this. You can't please these people we're dealing with. So what I'm simply saying is, when you got to put the little small stuff aside and realize, brother, we just got to win this war, get it done. Yes, we'll improve our games, but it'll be a bit more proficient and speedy in doing what we need to do. Ensure that we navigate and mitigate any kind of neglect and slowness in the process of making the changes to adapt to these necessary financial measures to stay on target. But again, for persons to appreciate, we need to help them see as well exactly why these things are so important. Madam President, I really do support these bills, and I think it's fair to say that probably within the next 8 months or so, we can be hearing something. We can be hearing something. And respectfully, you're going to end up seeing the AG having to run chicken hen with the head cut off, trying to catch up on something, because it's going to break your rhythm on other things that's important, because you got to adjust these that people send at you. I think one important thing for us to always remember as well, that we are in this fight, and the referee is actually a competitor, because there's no referee between us and them. So how can you be fair when there's no adjudicator or arbiter or person who can intervene between us and them and cause them to see? For as instance, this last set of blasts, this thing, when they reviewed old data and made a decision instead of reviewing current data, we still get jammed with something simply because they're BEC, BPL. They get cause your TV blow up, and you got to go to them to appeal for the damages to your TV. That is just simply not fair. I'm glad that we're dealing with these now. At least we shouldn't have to come back off our Christmas break to deal with it. And this should allow the government to have addressed the matter sufficiently. I do believe this is enough to address the matter, Mr. Economic Affairs, and meet the February reporting deadline, right? It is February reporting deadline. And so with that, I want to say that I actually support the bills and the amendments, and I am looking forward to its effectiveness for as long as it lasts. I rest.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Reuben Ramming. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon. Madam President, today we debate an important compendium of financial services-related bills. I describe these bills in three distinct categories. The first are bills that ensure our international compliance. Secondly, Madam President, there are bills that demonstrate the innovation and the nimbleness of the Bahamas when addressing important financial services opportunities. And thirdly, Madam President, ensuring regulatory excellence in financial services enforcement. Madam President, these are time-sensitive bills for differing reasons, which I will address in my contribution, and we appreciate the cooperation of the opposition in allowing for the debate and passage of these bills as a compendium and in a timely fashion. Madam President, ensuring international on economic substance. The Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Amendment Bill and the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill both are required to facilitate the exchange of information on relevant entities and the conduct of economic substance in the Bahamas. This exchange is pursuant to the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act 2023 that we passed earlier this year. The CESRA bill provides for the scope of exchange of information depending on if the Bahamas has an effective monitoring mechanism or not. Bless you. At the present, the Bahamas does not. The Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill, or the ROBO Amendment, allows for the Economic Substance Portal, our new portal, and the Beneficial Ownership Portal, which is already in existence, the ability to share information to ensure the effective and the efficient exchanges of information with our exchange partners. I may ask, and it was asked today, well, why didn't we include these provisions when we passed the bill earlier this year? At that time of the passage of the act, we would not have known what adjustments might be required in order to facilitate the exchange of information. This is because the portal hadn't launched yet. And so we were unable to know, and the developers were unable to know and predict what would be required in law to cause the two to speak to each other. To be clear, the deficiency in economic substance reporting is the reason why the Bahamas is regarded as non-cooperative by the European Union on tax matters. I think at this time, because the F&M opposition continues to mislead Bahamian people on how we got here, it is necessary to describe the history as it relates to economic substance compliance in the Bahamas. Madam President, the original act, CESRA, was entered into force in the Bahamas with the effect from the 1st of January 2019 for the implementation of our commitments with the OECD under BEPS Action Plan 5. At the end of 2020, the government received notice of certain deficiencies related to the implementation of CESRA by the prior administration and the economic substance reporting that were found when they did their monitoring in 2019 and 2020. In November of 2022, we were added to the list of non-cooperative jurisdictions. It has taken until now to be able to satisfy the OECD and the EU of compliance with economic reporting standards because of the grave level of non-compliance that we met when we came to office. Non-compliance that was perpetuated by poor decisions of the former F&M administration. Madam President, let me speak about the notable deficiencies that we encountered and why it has taken this long. Madam President, the chosen reporting portal by the former administration was not interactive and didn't even store the necessary data to properly report according to the law. The data accumulated, the data that they collected, had to be vetted and reviewed manually. It was not freely accessible through the portal that was put in place by the former administration. Upon coming to office, the entire framework had to be replaced. Madam President, it's like we started at ground zero. We had to put in a new act, a brand new act, Madam President. We had to have the reporting unit with the necessary capacity to undertake the obligations, our obligations under law. The development of a new reporting portal was required that could actually function at considerable expense and considerable time to develop. A review, Madam President, a review of all historical data from day one. All historical data had to be done manually by individuals going through page by page of data. Madam President, not only did they have to review the data manually, they had to actually classify the data manually. The portal couldn't even classify the data in a form to report. To have to manually verify and confirm the data. This is why we are now on the list, because of these deficiencies. Once the manual data verification exercise was complete, then the data had to be migrated into the new portal that we put in place, Madam President. Once migrated into the new portal that we had to put in place, it will then be exchanged with relevant partners. That's right. We've been working on it because we had to start at ground zero.
That's what he's saying.
No, you should have kept what you had.
No,
And then work on that on
it
the
wasn't
side.
working.
It was working. We was
No,
on the
it
list.
wasn't. That's the whole point.
Madam President,
We were not on the list.
it is important to note,
Let's know.
it is important to note that in addition to these mechanical reporting deficiencies, we had to build a new and an operational enforcement division. There wasn't even an enforcement division to enforce the obligations under the law. Because we must demonstrate that we not only have the laws that are correct, which we had to replace, we had the necessary reporting mechanisms, which we had to replace, but we also have the ability and actually inspect for compliance and enforce when there is non-compliant, which didn't exist. All of this had to be developed and put in place and operate to demonstrate compliance to be removed from the EU list. Madam President, I also think it important to emphasize where we are and the agreement made with the OECD and the EU regarding our cooperative status. Madam President, this arrangement was negotiated specifically by my colleague, Minister Halkitis. And I asked him why he would not give himself credit for this, because he is due the credit. But I told him, don't worry, I'll give you credit.
He's a humble man.
I'll give you credit. This arrangement, negotiated by Minister Halkitis with the OECD when he visited Paris, provides that if we can conclude all of the outstanding exchanges that are due using the process I just described, that would be compliant with the methodology of exchange of the OECD. And if we can conclude those exchanges by December 1st, 2023, then we will be reassessed by the OECD as compliant, and the European Union will recognize this reassessment and remove us from the list of non-cooperative jurisdictions when it meets in February. I personally want to congratulate my colleague, Minister Halkitis, and his team for doing what is necessary to effectively recreate from new the entire economic substance reporting process of the country.
Yes.
Madam President, what we met in place, or the lack thereof, when we took office, was nothing short of gross negligence by the former F&M administration. It took a New Day government to remediate every element of the economic substance framework. get point we find ourselves today.
Senator. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Pickstock. What is your point of order?
President, this member is making imputations. This member is making imputations. He's accusing the former administration of gross negligence when he finds himself on a blacklist that he was on now for more than 2 years and refuses to take ownership of it. We came here today in solidarity to stand with the government because we feel that the treatment that we receive is unfair. And I feel it is painfully unfair for this member, who has been in the office for more than 2 years, to continue to impute these kind of negligent remarks, which are unfounded in this honorable place. That's my point, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield. Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder,
Yeah,
you wish to respond? You wish to respond to Senator the Honorable Henfield?
No.
So,
Madam President.
What do you say that should be stricken from the record?
Absolutely not. It's my
It should
opinion.
be stricken from the records
I'm entitled
because
to an
he
opinion.
cannot prove negligence
I just did.
on behalf of any administration in this country who's been fighting these issues for years.
Senator,
And secondly, on a higher plane as the Attorney General of the Bahamas, than to come in here making excuses after being in office for almost 3 years. When he came to office, we were on no blacklist. We were on no blacklist with the systems that we used then.
No, we're on
He
a
changed the
blacklist
system,
because of
and he
the
refuses
systems you used
and he
then.
refuses to take ownership of the changes that he made to the system that has the country on a blacklist. He refuses.
Madam President,
Instead, he lays blame.
blatantly incorrect.
Instead, he lays blame.
one senator at a time,
This is
please.
not a place to lay blame,
Senator,
and this is a place for you to fix the problem.
Senator,
Sit down.
Fix the
No, no,
problem.
no.
The
And
problem is
crying.
fixed. Sit
Stop
down.
crying in here.
Sit down.
Cry, baby. Sit
down.
That's all you come in here to do, cry?
Take responsibilities for your negligence,
ought to-
man.
you
You
ought to-
were in the cabinet.
You ought to
You
take-
were responsible for
You
your
ought to take
negligence.
responsibility because you were there now.
Order.
You've been there for more than 2 years.
order.
You've been there for more.
It's fixed.
Why we still on the list?
It's fixed.
Why we still on the
I
list?
told you what was happening.
Why we still on the list?
Order. Order.
Sit down. Sit down.
Order.
Take responsibility for negligence you put on this country. You'll put this on us. You'll put this on the country, and it is a New Day government that is fixing the problems that you put in place when we came to office. We will fix this, and we have fixed this, Madam President. Madam President? The second element of the compendium of bills that we speak to today deals with the innovation and the nimbleness of the Bahamas, Madam President. Madam President, I have always said that the element that distinguishes the Bahamas in financial services matters, including structuring and product development, is our sovereignty, especially as compared with our international financial center competitors, such as the Cayman Islands and the British Virgin Islands. Our sovereignty allows us to be nimble, flexible, and allows us to react to international changes and creating new products and structuring opportunities in law. Madam President, the Investment Condominium Amendment Bill, the International Business Company Amendment Bill, and the Exempt Limited Partnership Amendment Bill the benefits of our sovereignty, of our innovation, and our product development. I think it's important to give some context on why these amendments were prepared and then detailed what they do. For several years, Madam President, Brazilian clients have been able to use investment funds and particularly investment condominiums under the Investment Condominium Act to achieve a tax-deferred investment mechanism for their investments. We put these structures in place when I was Minister of Financial Services, Madam President, and saw significant increases in Brazilian business in the country as a result. For the last few years, Brazil has been looking to change its tax laws to remove this tax deferral for offshore investment. And this year, they finally were able to put the necessary amendments to their tax laws, thus removing the existing tax advantages of utilizing investment funds and investment condominiums in the Bahamas. We will see a reduction in Brazilians using investment funds and investment condominiums because of this. However, there is still an advantage to holding your assets offshore. We thus need to provide the mechanism that is found in these bills for Brazilians to convert their investments held in an ICON, an investment condominium, back to an IBC or an exempt limited partnership. We anticipate that we will have conversion requests before this calendar year, and this is why it is important and timely to have these amendments done. The second example of innovation to facilitate changing laws and client structures is found in the IBC Amendment Bill. The amendment allows for a concept called a demerger. A demerger is the opposite of what we know as a merger. It is the splitting of a single IBC into two or more IBCs by operation of law. It is not considered a distribution, nor is it considered a dividend by law, but is considered a reorganization of the entity from one entity into multiple entities. Again, I think it's important to provide some context on why we're proceeding with this novel form of reorganization, a demerger. A demerger can be utilized for several different reasons. The immediate constituency for a demerger is again going to be the Brazilian client. A few years ago, Madam President, Brazil allowed for what's called a tax amnesty for its citizens who had undeclared assets abroad and declared for tax purposes. Many Brazilians took advantage of this amnesty program. However, as discussed before, there is still an overwhelming benefit to holding your assets in an offshore jurisdiction like the Bahamas. These clients, however, were unable to split their assets among their family or their heirs if they had passed away, because doing so would be a taxable event. It would be a distribution, a dividend that would be taxable. A demerger will allow these clients to reorganize their holdings into multiple companies on a tax-free basis, allowing family planning and inheritance. For example, a Brazilian patriarch may have his assets in one company. He may have passed away and have 5 children or 5 heirs. He would be unable to reorganize that one company for those 5 heirs because of tax obligations. This now allows for a tax-free splitting of that company among the 5 heirs as his will would have instructed. The demerger concept is a novel one in corporate structuring, one that the industry is very excited for. The demerger option is anticipated to cause for hundreds, if not thousands, of new companies to register as Bahamian IBCs. It is also anticipated we will see companies from other jurisdictions re-domiciled to the Bahamas to take advantage specifically of this demerger provision. This is an exciting amendment and new product offering for our financial services industry of the Bahamas, potentially generating new business for the country and revenue for the government. Madam President, the PLP has always demonstrated the willingness and the urgency to be innovative in financial services to grow our industry. The PLP has found an urgent need to attract new clients when global forces constantly change and shift, putting former structures and offerings at risk. I am particularly proud and excited for this innovation, again, causing the Bahamas to lead from the front in financial services and solidifying it as a preeminent international financial center in the world. Madam President, I speak to regulatory excellence. Bahamas has achieved under the PLP what only one of 6 countries in the world has achieved. Only 6 have achieved this, the Bahamas being one. Obtaining compliant or largely compliant ratings in all 40 ATF recommendations on countering money laundering and terrorist financing risk. One of 6 in the entire world.
Speak volumes.
This is an achievement that we as a country do not celebrate enough. Despite the inequitable treatment of small international financial centers, that only took like 9 months. In the global south, we have achieved a level of excellence that most countries in the global north and members of the OECD themselves have not achieved. To keep this standard of regulatory excellence requires continued development, tweaking, and modifications to our regime. The Financial Intelligence Bill does just this. The current act has not been updated since 2010. However, international regulatory standards have evolved since then. A mutual evaluation report of the Bahamas had some recommendations for amendment of the act that keep consistent with FATF standards. The bill today seeks to make just those adjustments, implement the recommended changes with a view to ensure the Bahamas remains atop of the anti-money laundering standards and continue to achieve regulatory excellence. Madam President, before I close, I want to recognize the excellence in the advocacy of our Prime Minister, Mr. Philip Brave Davis. Madam President, our Prime Minister is in fact a brave man, standing up to the global inequities that exist, asserting his position for fair treatment, and speaking out against the continued efforts of the European Union and others to colonize countries like the Bahamas. If not politically, Madam President, they certainly try to do it economically. I have heard ignorant statements from members of the FNM opposition about how the brave strategies and positions of the Prime Minister in this arena are misguided. Nothing can be further from the truth. I also hear, Madam President, juvenile statements by the FNM opposition admonishing the Prime Minister's travel for important policy-changing initiatives. This is a silly argument that they keep trying to advance. No credibility, Madam President, and clearly the evidence of the recent by-election shows they have no traction in anything they've been saying. When it comes to advocacy of fair treatment, we should be proud of the Bahamas for being a leading advocate, something we should collectively congratulate our Prime Minister for his global leadership. Madam President, I speak to the recent United Nations resolution that seeks to promote equity in global tax administration and seeks to establish a framework convention that would ultimately make decision-making countries from the global north recognize the United Nations as that applicable body. Immediately upon coming to office, at the first address before the United Nations General Assembly, the Prime Minister underscored the inequities that exist in policymaking by the OECD and the European Union. His first communication. The Prime Minister continued the advocacy at every opportunity, building global momentum for an important issue that has a material consequence to the economy and social underpinnings of our country. This advocacy continued up to the most recent United Nations General Assembly, where the Prime Minister wrote the Secretary General detailing a thoroughly researched position of current inequities and promoting the successful passage of the resolution I spoke of, advancing a position where the United Nations, a body of fair and equitable national governance, to advance global tax policy. Madam President, I have this letter here, and I would like to table it on behalf of the Prime Minister in this place. This is a brave letter, Madam President, one that demonstrates the intelligence and the fierce advocacy that our Prime Minister, Mr. Philip Brave Davis, is known for on the global stage. Madam President, I am proud to be part of his government, where aggressive and noble advocacy defines our international presence. It certainly is a new day for diplomacy for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam President. I so table this letter. In conclusion, Madam President, the Bahamas has a lot to be proud of. We are innovative, nimble financial center, a small island developing state in the global south who is not afraid to advocate for what is just and what is equitable.
Order that the document do now lie on the table.
Madam President, we punch above our weight. We lead from the front and we innovate for economic progress. Yes, being a leader in financial services isn't easy. As my sailor would appreciate, it is a journey of ebbs and flows, of highs and lows, sometimes high and low at the same time. I, however, believe in our leadership. I believe in our innovation, and I believe in being a leader in the international finance arena. Madam President, I am proud to be a Bahamian financial services professional as we advance the benefit of that great industry in our country, Madam President. With that, Madam President, I rest and I support the advancement of the compendium of financial services bills, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Madam President, I move that business of the Senate who sit beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate sit beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon. As many are in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order of the business of the Senate will sit beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon. As many? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes. As many are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the International Business Company Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes.
For the second reading.
Yes, Madam President, I move for second reading and committal of a bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected.
Seconder. It's been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
Bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
For the second reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I move for second reading and committal of a bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes. As many say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
For the second reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I move second reading and committal of a bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act.
Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a second time and
An act amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act.
for the second reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I move second reading and commit of a bill for an act to amend the Commercial and Substance Requirements Act.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act.
Committee of the Whole. I'm sorry. For the second reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I move for second reading and committal of a bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit, repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for act to provide for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit and to repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit and to repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act.
Committee of the Whole.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now resolve itself into a committee of the whole with the Vice President in the chair.
Is there a second now? It's been moved and seconded that the Senate do now resolve itself into the committee as a whole with the Vice President and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole in the chair. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried.
Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we turn to the International Business Companies Amendment Number 2 Bill 2023. President, so in respect of a bill act to amend the International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes, I move that the long title be agreed.
Is there a seconder? It moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed.
Mr. President, I move that the short title be agreed.
It has been seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that clauses 2 to 7 be agreed.
Second.
It's moved and seconded that clauses 2 through 7 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The motion is carried. Clauses 2 through 7 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be now agreed in its entirety.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect to a bill or an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes, I move that the long title be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that clause 2 of the bill be agreed.
It is moved and seconded that clause 2 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. Clause 2 of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be now agreed in its entirety.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect to a bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempt limited partnership, and for connected purposes, I move that the long title be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that clause 2 of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that clause 2 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. Clause 2 of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be now agreed in its entirety.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect to a bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act, I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that clause 2 of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that clause 2 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. Clause 2 of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill in its entirety.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to a bill for an act to amend the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act. I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that clauses 2 through 11 of the bill be agreed.
It is moved and seconded that clauses 2 through 11 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. Clauses 2 through 11 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be now agreed in its entirety.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to a bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit and to repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act, I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that clauses 2 through 28 of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 through 28 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. Clauses 2 through 28 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the first and second schedule of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the first and second schedule of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. Schedules, the first and second schedule of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that Madam President do now take the chair.
It has been moved and seconded that the President do now take the chair. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is carried. Madam President will now take the chair. Thank you, sir. Madam President, I beg leave to report that the whole has examined all bills before the Senate, having made no amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the Vice President and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole has reported that the committee has examined the bill and amendments thereto. Third reading and passing of bills.
Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill or act to amend the International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a third time and pass.
A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act for demerging an international business company and for converting an investment condominium to an international business company and for connected purposes.
Order this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be International Business Companies Amendment Number 2 Act 2023. third reading of bills?
Yes, Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Exempt Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Exempted Limited Partnership Act for converting an investment condominium to an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Exempted Limited Partnership Amendment Number 2 Act 2023. For the third reading of bills?
Yes, Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act, permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Investment Condominium Act permitting an investment condominium to convert to an international business company or an exempted limited partnership and for connected purposes.
Order that this bill now pass and the title thereof declared to be Investment Condominium Amendment Act 2023. For the third reading of bills?
Yes, Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act.
It's been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act.
Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2023. For the reading of bills?
Yes, Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Commercial Entities Substance Requirements Act.
Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Amendment Act 2023. For the third reading of bills?
Yes, Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit and to repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Financial Intelligence Unit and to repeal and replace the Financial Intelligence Unit Act.
Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Financial Intelligence Unit Act 2023. For the third reading of bills?
Done, Madam President.
Consideration of House amendments? None. Resolutions? None. Discharge of committees? None. Notices for future meetings?
Madam President, I would like to renew all notices in the name of the government.
Orders for clerk? Adjournment.
President, before we adjourn, I would just like to once again thank all senators for their participation and valued contribution in this debate. Madam President, we will propose to adjourn until December 18th, which we anticipate will be the final sitting of the Senate for the year. At that time, we intend to debate a bill for an act to change the name of Hog Key, an island in the east of the Little Exuma mainland, changing from Hog Key to Torch Key. We want to pass the bill for an act to amend the Supreme Court Act, a bill for an act to establish an independent body to manage administration of the courts, a bill for an act to amend the Judges' Remuneration and Pensions Act, a bill for an act to amend the Magistrates Act, a bill for an act to amend the Coroners Act, a bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, and we also want to amend the Anti-Doping Act. It is our intention to debate what we will term the judicial related bills as a compendium and debate the anti-doping legislation separately and get the name change in there somehow. So, Madam President, it's a bill. It's a bill. So, Madam President, I move that the Senate at its rising do adjourn until Monday, December 18th, 2023.
No. You wanted to say something? You want to say it now?
Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Kirkland Russell.
Thank you, Madam President, for the recognition. I would be remiss if I allow this day to pass, and I do not take this opportunity on behalf of the good people of Grand Bahama in particularly, and congratulating Mr. Kingsley Smith on being sworn in and taking his seat as the Member of Parliament for West End and Bimini. I've known Mr. Smith for quite a while, and I've known him to be a man who has the 3 Ds to succeed. He is dedicated, he is determined, and he is very disciplined. And I know that he will provide the people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini with the kind of representation that they are accustomed to under a PLP administration. I also, while I'm on my feet, on the 13th of November, we would have dedicated and named the government complex in 8 Mile Rock after the late Obadiah Hercules Wilchcomb. I want to also just say how happy the persons in West Grand Bahama are. And let me tell you, we dedicated the building on the 13th of November. And on the 14th, which was the birthday of Obadiah Hercules Wilchcomb, the building was officially opened. The following week, yes, and let me say that the following week, the community of 8 Mile Rock welcomed the cabinet into 8 Mile Rock, and the first official cabinet meeting took place in the city of 8 Mile Rock. And so I want to just again thank the Prime Minister, the entire Progressive Liberal Party operation, for not taking the people in West Grand Bahama and Bimini for granted. And so congratulations, Mr. Smith, and I'm sure you will do a fine job representing the people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Kirkland Russell. While you're on your feet, be so kind as to second the adjournment, please.
Second.
Thank you, Senator Russell. It has been moved and seconded that the Senate at its rising do adjourn to December 18th, 2023. As many are in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Final adjournment.
Yes, Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now adjourn. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is agreed. The Senate stands adjourned to December 18th, 2023.